The marketplace was loud, filled with strange smells, glowing lights, and the constant noise of alien traders shouting their prices. The air was heavy with smoke from cooking fires and the sharp metallic scent of machinery. Creatures of every shape and size moved between stalls, their voices mixing into a strange music of chaos. Near the far end of the market, a small alien girl stood frozen. Her silver eyes were wide with fear, and her thin frame trembled. She wore a torn cloth dress, and her pale blue skin was covered in dust and scratches. She clutched something close to her chest, small pouch, holding it as if her life depended on it. In front of her stood a beast, taller than any trader in the market. Its body was covered in thick black fur, streaked with glowing blue patterns. Its jaws were lined with sharp white teeth, and its eyes burned like two red flames. The crowd had backed away, forming a loose circle. No one dared to help her. The beast growled low, the sound deep enough to vibrate through the ground. The girl's legs shook. She took a step back, but her foot caught on a broken piece of metal. She stumbled, almost falling. The beast took a slow step forward, and then someone stepped between them. The newcomer was a human, wearing battle-worn armor that reflected the cold light of the market. His chest plate was dented, his gauntlets scratched, and a long sword hung at his side. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, focused on the beast. "Don't worry, he won't bite," the human said. His voice was low, steady, and somehow reassuring. The alien girl blinked at him, confused. She had never seen a human before, not in person, only in warnings told by the elders. Humans are dangerous, they had said. Humans will take what they want and leave you broken. But now, here was one standing between her and certain death. The beast growled again, lowering its head, but it did not attack. It looked at the human with an almost obedient stillness. The human raised his hand slowly, palm facing the beast. "Easy," he said softly. The beast's ears flicked, and after a moment, it stepped back. Its glowing eyes remained fixed on the girl, but it no longer advanced. The girl's breathing was fast, shallow. She didn't know if she should run or stay. The human turned to her, his gaze steady. "You're safe," he said. "As long as you're with me." She stared at him, unsure if she could believe those words. "Why? Why help me?" she asked quietly. Her voice was hoarse from fear. He gave a small shrug. "Because you need it," he replied simply, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. The crowd slowly began to move again. Some whispered, some shook their heads. A few looked at the human with open distrust. Humans were rare here, and one standing up for an alien girl was even stranger. The human extended a hand to her. "Come on," he said. "You can't stay here." She hesitated, then shook her head. I don't know you," she whispered. Her people had taught her never to trust strangers, especially not humans. "That's fair," he said, lowering his hand. "But if you stay, you won't live long enough to decide whether to trust me." His eyes glanced toward the shadows at the edge of the market, where a few tall figures had been watching the entire scene. The girl followed his gaze and saw them 3 figures in dark cloaks, their faces hidden, but their attention fixed entirely on her. A chill ran down her spine. "Your choice," the human said, turning to walk away. The beast followed him like a loyal guard. For a heartbeat, the girl stood frozen, torn between fear of the human and fear of those cloaked watchers. Then one of the figures moved, stepping into the light, and she saw the glint of a weapon. She ran. Her bare feet slapped against the metal floor of the market as she hurried after the human. "Wait," she called. He didn't turn right away, but slowed his pace so she could catch up. When she reached him, her breath was uneven, and her eyes darted between him and the beast walking at his side. "Stay close," he said quietly, "and don't look back." They moved quickly through the twisting alleys of the market. past stalls selling alien weapons, strange glowing fruit, and cages filled with unknown creatures. The noise of the crowd slowly faded as they entered the quieter outskirts only. Then did the girl dare to speak again. That beast. Why does it listen to you? The human glanced at the creature, which was padding silently beside them. Because I saved him once, he said, and he remembers. The girl's eyes widened. She had never heard of a beast like that showing loyalty to anyone, let alone a human. Before she could ask more, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them fast. Determined and getting closer, the human's eyes narrowed. They're following us, he said, resting a hand on the hilt of his sword. Stay behind me. The girl's heart pounded. She clutched her small pouch tighter, not realizing that this moment would change her life forever. The narrow alley smelled of rust and damp stone. The sounds of the market were now far behind them, replaced by the distant hum of power lines and the faint hiss of steam escaping from broken pipes. The human moved quickly, his armor clinking softly with each step. The beast padded beside him, silent but alert. The alien girl followed close, her small hands clutching the pouch at her chest. Her silver eyes darted to every shadow she could. Still hear faint footsteps behind them, growing softer. Then louder again, as if the pursuers were toying with them. Where are we going? She whispered. Somewhere safe, the human replied without slowing. His voice was calm, but his eyes scanned every corner, every rooftop. You shouldn't be out in the open. She hesitated before speaking again. You don't know me. Why do you care if I live or not? The human glanced at her briefly. I've seen enough people die, he said. You don't need to be one of them. Something in his tone silenced her questions. It wasn't just pity, it was conviction, the kind that came from someone who had already lost too much. They turned a corner and entered a wider street. The light here was dim, filtered through flickering neon signs and the pale glow of a distant moon. A few street vendors watched them pass, but no one dared to speak. The presence of the beast kept curious eyes away. The girl's steps slowed slightly. She was still unsure, still afraid. She had been taught to distrust humans, to believe they were unpredictable and dangerous, but this one. He had put himself between her and certain death without asking for anything. That didn't fit the stories she had heard. They passed a small food stall where the smell of roasted meat filled the air. The human stopped, reached into a pouch on his belt, and handed the vendor a few dull coins. Moments later, he was holding a small package wrapped in steaming paper. Here, he said, offering it to her. She blinked at him, confused. For me? You look like you haven't eaten in days, he said. Her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. Her cheeks warmed, but she took the package. The smell was so rich and strange that she almost forgot her fear. She took a small bite, and was surprised by how tender and flavorful it was. You didn't have to. She started, but stopped when he raised a hand. Eat, he said simply. We'll talk later. They continued walking. The girl eating slowly, her mind kept returning to the cloaked figures from the market. She could still feel their gaze, cold and heavy. Finally, she asked, Do you think they'll follow us? The human's jaw tightened. They already are, he said quietly. His hand brushed the hilt of his sword again. And they won't stop until they get what they came for. Her grip on the pouch tightened. The small object inside pressed against her fingers, a reminder of why she had been running before she even reached the market. Before she could speak, the beast growled, low and deep. Its ears were forward, its glowing eyes scanning the rooftops. They're getting closer, the human muttered. He guided her toward a shadowed archway leading into an old maintenance tunnel. The air inside was cool and damp, the walls lined with thick cables and dripping pipes. Stay close, he said, moving ahead with confident steps. His posture was protective, his body always angled between her and the source of danger. The sound of footsteps echoed in the tunnel, this time from both ahead and behind. The girl's heart raced. "We're trapped," she whispered. "Not yet," the human replied. His voice was steady, but his eyes had a sharp edge now. Figures emerged from the darkness ahead, 3 of them, cloaked and armed. Their faces were hidden, but their weapons gleamed in the dim light. Behind them, more shadows moved. Blocking the way they had come, the leader stepped forward, voice cold and smooth, hand over the girl. The human's reply was immediate. "Not happening. You don't understand," the leader said. "She belongs to us. She belongs to no one," the human said, his hand now firmly on his sword. "And if you try to take her—" He stepped forward, the beast growling at his side. "Fear him all you want, but fear me if you harm her." The leader hesitated, his gaze shifting to the beast, then back to the human for a moment. The tunnel was silent except for the slow drip of water, and then everything exploded into motion. The attackers surged forward. The beast leaped, teeth flashing. The human sword drew a silver arc through the air. Striking the first attacker's weapon aside, sparks lit up the tunnel. The girl pressed herself against the wall, her breath coming fast. She watched as the human fought with skill and precision. His movements fluid but powerful. The beast tore into one of the cloaked figures, sending him crashing to the floor. Another swung at the human, but he blocked, countered, and drove him back with a kick. The fight was fast but brutal, and soon the remaining attackers retreated into the shadows. Dragging their wounded with them, the tunnel fell silent again. The human wiped his blade on his armor, then turned to the girl. "You hurt." She shook her head, still breathing hard. "Why? Why risk your life for me?" He gave her a small, tired smile. "Because you deserve a chance to live." Oh, for the first time, she felt the sharp edge of her fear soften. Maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. The tunnel was silent now, except for the soft drip of water and the slow, heavy breaths of the beast. The alien girl clung to the wall, her silver eyes still wide from what she had just seen. She had never witnessed a human fight before, and the memory of his sword moving like a flash of light was still fresh in her mind. The human stepped closer to her, scanning the shadows one. "Last time, they'll be back," he said. "We can't stay here." She nodded, but her hands were still trembling. The pouch pressed against her chest, reminding her why she was running, and why those cloaked figures would never stop hunting her. They moved deeper into the tunnel, their steps echoing softly. The beast padded ahead now, its glowing blue patterns faint in the dim light. Every few seconds, it would lift its head and sniff the air, then glance back at the human as if waiting for orders. The girl finally spoke, her voice small. "That thing. It listens to you like it's yours." The human gave a faint smirk. "Not mine," he said. "Just a friend." She tilted her head, confused. Friends? Between humans and beasts? He didn't answer, but his slight smile said enough. They reached the end of the tunnel, stepping into an abandoned cargo bay. Dust floated in the air like pale mist, and the faint hum of an old generator buzzed from the far corner. The walls were lined with rusted containers, some half open, revealing scraps of metal and strange alien tools. "This will do for now," the human said, motioning her to sit near the wall. He knelt by the beast, checking a shallow cut on its flank. The creature rumbled softly but didn't move away. The girl sat but didn't relax. Her gaze kept flicking to the wide doorway of the bay. She could feel its eyes on them, somewhere out there, watching, waiting. "Who are they?" she asked suddenly. "The ones chasing me." The human didn't look at her. "People who think they own others," he said. "Slavers, bounty hunters, or worse." Her throat tightened. She had heard of such people, but she never thought they would come for her. She swallowed hard. They can't find me. They won't," he said, looking at her now. "Not while I'm breathing." Before she could reply, the beast's head snapped toward the doorway. It let out a low growl. The human stood instantly, drawing his sword. There. Here, he said. Shadows shifted at the entrance. And then the cloaked figures stepped inside. More of them, this time 6 in total. Moving in a half-circle to block every exit, their leader was gone, but the intent was the same. The girl's pulse raced. She pressed herself against the wall, watching as the human stepped forward to meet them. The beast stood at his side, its teeth bared. "You could walk away," the human said. His voice calm but edged with steel. One of the attackers laughed, not without the girl. "Then you're not walking at all," the human replied. The first attacker lunged and the fight began. The human's sword moved like lightning, parrying a blow and striking back in one motion. The beast leaped into another attacker, knocking him to the ground with a snarl. The girl's eyes followed every movement, how he never turned his back on her. How every strike kept her out of reach of the enemy. A third attacker tried to rush past him toward her, but the human blocked the path, blade flashing in a deadly arc. The attacker stumbled back, clutching his arm. The fight was fast, brutal, and loud, the clash of metal on metal. The growls of the beast, the sharp cries of pain. Dust swirled in the air as the combatants moved. 2 attackers tried to flank him at once. But he spun, blocking one strike and kicking the other in the chest, sending him crashing into a metal container. The beast tore the weapon from another's hand and sent it skidding across the floor. The girl's fear mixed with something else, now something she didn't expect. She felt safe, despite the chaos, despite the danger. She knew he wouldn't let them take her. One of the cloaked figures whistled sharply, and the group began to pull back, dragging their wounded with them. In seconds, they were gone, disappearing into the shadows beyond the doorway. The human stood still for a moment, his sword lowered but ready. Only when the silence returned did he finally relax. He looked at her, his breathing steady. "You all right?" She nodded slowly. You could have run, left me." He sheathed his sword. "Could have," he said simply, "but I didn't." The beast padded over to her, sniffing her hands before sitting beside her like a silent guardian. The girl hesitated, then slowly reached out to touch its fur. It was warm and softer than she expected. "You're both strange," she whispered, half to herself. The human gave a faint smile. "Get used to it." She looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time since they met, she felt a small spark of trust, but deep down, she knew the fight wasn't over. The hunters would come again, and next time, they might not retreat so easily. The cargo bay was quiet again, but the silence felt heavy. The alien girl sat against the wall, her knees pulled to her chest. The beast rested near the doorway, its glowing patterns dimming as it breathed slowly. The human knelt by a small metal crate, cleaning his sword with a rag. The dim light from the broken ceiling panels cast long shadows, flickering whenever the old generator's hum wavered. The girl's heart was still beating fast, but her fear had changed, which was no longer just fear of the hunters. It was fear of what would happen if this human ever left her. "You fight like someone who's done it for years," she said quietly. He didn't look up. "I have. Why?" She asked. "Why risk your life for me when you could just walk away?" He was silent for a long moment, still running the cloth along the blade. Finally, he set the sword down and looked at her. "Because I know what it's like to be hunted." Her breath caught. She didn't expect that answer. "You?" He nodded. "Long time ago, different planet, different people, but the same feeling. Always looking over your shoulder, never sleeping without a weapon nearby, wondering if tomorrow is the day they catch you." She stared at him, trying to imagine this tall, strong human as someone running for his life. It didn't seem possible. "What did you do?" she asked. "Survived," he said simply. until I could fight back. The girl hesitated, her fingers tightening around the pouch she had been guarding since the market. She knew he was telling the truth, but she also knew he was holding something back. Still, so was she. Slowly, she pulled the pouch into her lap and loosened the string. Inside was a small metal device, no larger than a human's palm. Its surface shimmered with faint blue light. Lines of alien script moving across it like water. The human's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "It's why they're chasing me," she whispered. "It's not just valuable. It's dangerous." He leaned closer. "Dangerous? How?" "It's called the Veil Key," she said. "It can open locked gates between worlds, gates that were sealed after the wars. If they get it, they can cross into places they were never meant to reach." The human frowned. "Why do you have it?" She looked away. "Because my mother gave it to me before she was taken." Her voice cracked slightly. "She said I had to keep it safe, no matter what. She said there are people, humans too, who would protect me if I could find them." His expression tightened. "Your mother knew humans. She said she trusted them," the girl replied. "But I've never met one until you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The distant hum of the generator filled the space between their words. The human finally said, "Then she was right." The girl blinked. "Right about what?" "That you'd find one who would protect you," he said. Her chest tightened, a strange warmth mixing with the lingering fear. She had lived her whole life being told humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and selfish. But here was one standing between her and death more than once without asking for anything in return. The beast suddenly lifted its head, ears twitching. It gave a low growl. The human stood instantly. "They're moving again," he said. Strapping his sword to his side, the girl's stomach nodded. "How do you know?" He tapped his temple. "Experience." Then he glanced at her, and his ears never lie, nodding toward the beast. She quickly tied the pouch shut and stood. "Where will we go?" "There's a safe zone in the old ruins outside the city," he said. "If we can get there, we can hide for a while, but it's a long way, and they'll be hunting every step." The girl swallowed hard. "Then let's move." They slipped out through a side exit of the cargo bay, following a narrow passage that wound between abandoned warehouses. The night air was colder now, carrying the faint metallic taste of rain. The city lights flickered in the distance, but ahead was only darkness and the faint glow of alien moss clinging to the walls. As they walked, the girl asked, "If they catch us, what will they do?" The human's voice was steady. "You don't want to know." She shivered, pulling her thin cloak tighter. The beast stayed close to her side now, almost as if it understood her fear. Halfway down the passage, they heard its soft, deliberate footsteps following them. The human motioned for her to stop and listen. The sound came from multiple directions. "They're surrounding us," he murmured. "We'll have to fight our way out." Her breath caught again. "This won't be the last time," he said, drawing his sword. "But every time we survive, we get one step closer to safety." She looked at him for a long moment, her heart pounding. "Then I'll stay close to you." The human gave a faint, determined smile. "Good, because as long as you're close, you'll live." And with that, the beast growled low, and they moved toward the darkness ahead, straight into whatever was waiting for them. The narrow passage stretched ahead, silent except for the distant drip of water. The human's eyes scanned every shadow, his sword ready. The beast stayed low, its muscles tense. The alien girl clutched her pouch tight, her breathing quick and uneven. Then, from behind, a sharp whistle cut through the air. The human's expression hardened. "Move," he said, grabbing her arm and pulling her forward. Footsteps thundered behind them, many footsteps, fast and closing. The girl glanced back and saw dark shapes spilling into the passage, cloaked figures running with long strides, their weapons glinting in the dim light. Her pulse raced. The cold Air burned her lungs as she tried to keep up with the human's fast pace. The beast darted ahead, weaving through the darkness like a shadow with glowing blue lines, scouting the path. "Where are we going?" She gasped. "Out of their trap," the human replied, not looking back. They reached the end of the passage, but it opened into a wide loading yard with no cover, just broken crates, rusted machinery, and the open sky. "They'll see us here." She whispered. "They already do," he said. A loud shout echoed behind them. An Aerosaur, something like them, whistled through the air. One struck a crate near her, shattering it into splinters. She yelped and stumbled, but the human caught her arm before she fell. "Keep moving," he barked. They sprinted across the yard, the sound of their pursuers growing louder. The girl's feet ached, and her legs screamed for rest, but she didn't dare slow down. The human ran like someone who had done this 100 times, never hesitating, never looking lost. Ahead, a tall fence of twisted metal loomed. At its base was a gap just wide enough for a person to slip through if they were fast. The beast reached it first. Sliding through with a growl, the human pushed the girl forward. "Go." She dropped to her knees and crawled through, the cold metal scraping her arms. As soon as she was clear, she turned to see the human following, but a figure had leaped from the shadows, blocking him. The attacker swung a curved blade, but the human twisted aside, striking back with his sword. Sparks lit the air as metal clashed. The girl wanted to call out, but her voice caught in her throat. More cloaked figures poured into the yard. The human fought his way toward the gap. His movements sharp and precise. 2 attackers went down, clutching their arms or shoulders. The moment he was close enough, he shoved himself through the gap. "Run," he said again. They dashed into another narrow alley, the sound of boots pounding behind them. The beast stayed close to the girl's side now, its glowing patterns pulsing faster, almost like a warning. The alley twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the city's forgotten ruins. Crumbling buildings leaned against each other, their walls covered in alien moss. The air smelled of damp stone and rust. "This way," the human said, cutting down a side path. They emerged into a massive abandoned station. Rows of empty platforms stretched out, broken rails disappearing into darkness. The roof above was cracked, letting thin beams of moonlight spill through. For a moment, it was quiet, too quiet. There, spreading out, the human said, his eyes scanning the shadows, trying to cut us off. The girl's stomach twisted. "Can we make it to the ruins?" "Not if we keep going straight," he said. "We'll have to lose them first." "How?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed to a set of old maintenance tunnels below the platforms. The openings were barely visible in the dark, but the beast was already sniffing at one of them. "They won't follow us down there," the human said. "Why not?" She asked. "Because even they know what's in those tunnels," he replied, his tone grim. Before she could ask more, the distant sound of footsteps returned closer now. "Move," he said, dropping down onto the tracks and into the tunnel. Entrance, the girl followed reluctantly, her heart pounding. The tunnel was colder, the air thick and stale. Their footsteps echoed in the narrow space. Every few moments, the human would stop and listen. The beast stayed ahead, its glowing markings casting just enough light to see. Behind them, the sounds of their pursuers grew fainter. Then, silence. The girl exhaled slowly. "Did we lose them?" "For now," the human said, "but they'll be waiting when we come out." She hugged her pouch tighter. "They really won't stop, will they?" "No," he said, "and neither will I." They continued deeper into the tunnels. Unaware that something was watching them from the darkness ahead, the tunnel's damp air clung to their skin. Every sound seemed louder here, the drip of water, the scuff of boots, the soft growl of the beast ahead. The human moved steadily, his sword in one hand, his other resting lightly on the wall as if feeling for vibrations. The alien girl followed closely, clutching her pouch, her eyes flicking to every shadow. They had been walking for almost an hour when the tunnel began to slope upward, faint. Light filtered in from cracks above, and the smell of fresh air reached them. "We're close," the human said quietly. "Once we reach the bridge, the safe zone is just beyond it." She nodded, though her heart still raced. "And the hunters?" "They'll know," he replied. "They'll try to stop us there." The beast gave a short, sharp growl that signaled that something was ahead. The human motioned for silence and crept forward, pressing himself against the tunnel wall. The girl stayed back, her breathing shallow. They reached the exit, a broken grate, leading out into the open night. Beyond it, the bridge stretched across a deep ravine. Its metal frame was old, patched in places, but still standing at the far end. The faint outline of the safe zone's walls stood against the sky, but between them and safety, figures moved. Cloaked hunters stood at both ends of the bridge, weapons ready. Their faces were hidden, but their stance was confident. They had been waiting. The human's jaw tightened. "No way around," he said. "We go through." The girl's voice was small. "All of them." He glanced at her, his tone calm but firm. "All of them," before she could protest. One of the hunters spotted them and shouted. More turned their heads, and in seconds, the air was thick with tension. The human stepped out of the tunnel first, the beast at his side. The alien girl stayed just behind him, her fingers trembling but holding onto the pouch like it was part of her. One of the hunters called out, "Give us the girl, human, and walk away." The human's voice was steady. "Not happening. You'll die for her." The hunter asked, almost mocking. The human's eyes didn't waver. "I'll kill for her." And then it began. The hunters surged forward. The human moved like a shadow, his sword flashing in the moonlight. The beast leaped into the fray, knocking one attacker clean off the bridge. The sound of metal on metal rang through the air, mixed with shouts and growls. The girl pressed herself against the side rail, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Every strike the human made was precise, blocking a blow, countering with his own, never letting them get close to her. Two hunters tried to flank them, one coming from the side, another from behind. The beast intercepted the one on the side, its teeth sinking into his arm. The human spun, catching the second attacker's blade with his own. The impact sent a shockwave up his arm, but he pushed forward, forcing the man back. An arrow whistled through the air toward the girl, but the human saw it in time. He stepped into its path, the arrow glancing off his armor. She gasped. "You're hit." "Not badly," he said through gritted teeth. "Stay down." The fight raged on. Each time they thought the hunters were falling back, more seemed to appear. The bridge trembled under the weight and movement, pieces of loose metal clanging as feet pounded across it. One attacker managed to slip past the human's guard and grab the girl's arm. She screamed, twisting to break free. The human turned sharply, rage flashing in his eyes. His sword came down hard, forcing the man to release her. "Stay behind me," he barked, his voice sharper than she'd ever heard it. Her fear was replaced by something else. Ingar. She reached into her pouch, pulling out the veil key. Its blue light flared brighter than before. The hunters froze for a heartbeat. Clearly recognizing what it was, that pause was all the human needed. He pressed the attack with renewed strength. The beast roared, knocking two hunters back so hard they crashed into the bridge rails. The metal groaned under the impact. One by one, the attackers began to retreat, dragging their injured with them. They vanished into the darkness on the other side of the bridge, leaving only the bodies of the fallen and the echo of their departure. The human lowered his sword, breathing heavily. His armor was dented, and a shallow cut bled on his arm, but his eyes were still sharp. "You all right?" he asked the girl. She nodded, still clutching the glowing device. "You You fought them all for me. I told you, he said, wiping his sword clean. As long as I'm breathing, the beast came to stand beside them, its fur rippling. In the night breeze, the human gave it a small nod, then turned toward the far end of the bridge. Come on, he said, the safe zone is just ahead. The girl followed, her steps unsteady but determined. For the first time, she truly believed him. No matter what came next, he would never let her face it alone. The bridge creaked beneath their feet as they stepped off its final plank. The moonlight gave way to the softer golden glow of the safe zone ahead. Tall walls made of old ship hulls and reinforced stone rose up like a shield against the world. Beyond, the gates were guarded by a pair of sentries, their faces covered with masks that hid any sign of expression. The human raised a hand as they approached. Travelers, he said simply, we need shelter. One guard looked them over, lingering on the beast and the girl's strange silver eyes, before nodding. The heavy gates opened with a deep groan, revealing a settlement inside. The safe zone was unlike the city they had fled. Here, there was no shouting marketplace, no choking smoke, only the low murmur of voices and the distant clink of tools. Small houses built from scavenged materials lined the narrow streets. Children played under the watchful eyes of their parents, the alien. Girl's shoulders loosened for the first time in days. Her steps slowed as her eyes darted around. She was unused to a place that felt calm. The human led her toward a quiet corner of the settlement where a low building stood. This place is for travelers like us, he said, pushing the door open. Inside, it was simple but warm. A fire crackled in a metal stove, and a few empty bunks lined the walls. The beast padded inside, curling up near the stove without hesitation. The girl followed, still holding her pouch, though her grip had softened. You can rest here, the human said, setting his sword down by the wall. We're safe for now. She sat on one of the bunks, her fingers tracing the edge of the veil key through the pouch. For now, she repeated softly. But what about tomorrow? What if they find us here? They might, he admitted, taking a seat across from her. But I'll be here too. She looked at him, really looked. The lines of exhaustion on his face, the small cut on his cheek, the way his shoulders were still tense even though they were behind safe walls. He was ready to fight again at a moment's notice. Why? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why keep risking yourself for me? The human was quiet for a long moment. The firelight reflected in his eyes. Because somewhere out there, someone didn't protect me when I needed it most. He said finally, I won't let you go through the same. Her throat tightened. Her people had told her humans were selfish, that they would help only if it benefited them. Yet here was one proving them wrong with every step they'd taken together. Slowly, she opened the pouch and took out the veil key. Its blue glow bathed the small room in a gentle light. She held it out toward him. If they catch me, they'll take this, if you have it. Maybe you can keep it safe. He shook his head. It's yours. But he leaned forward slightly. I'm not protecting a thing. I'm protecting you. Her fingers curled back around the key. She didn't know how to respond. So, she just nodded. They sat in silence for a while. The fire's warmth wrapping around them, outside. The sounds of the safe zone grew quieter as night deepened. When she finally spoke again, her voice was soft but sure. I'm not afraid anymore. The human tilted his head. No. She gave a faint smile. Not of you, not of the beast, not even of them. Not as long as you're here. He smiled faintly in return. Then we're on the same page. The beast lifted its head briefly, as if agreeing, then lowered it again. Drifting into sleep, the girl lay back on the bunk, watching the fires glow dance on the walls for the first time in as long as she could remember. She felt safe enough to close her eyes without fear clawing at her. As sleep began to pull her under, she heard his voice one last time. Low and steady. Rest now. You've got someone watching over you. And in that moment, she understood. Something her mother had once told her in a whisper, that sometimes, family isn't the one you're born to. It's the one that finds you when the rest of the world turns away. When she finally drifted off, the human sat quietly by the fire. His sword within arm's reach, his eyes stayed on the door, listening for anything beyond the walls, because his promise was simple, unspoken, and unbreakable, no matter what came through that gate, no matter how many times they tried. They'd have to get through him first.